everybody, it's Ian the Off-Kilter Crafter. I hope you're having a great day today. Today we're going to be talking about this quilt top. It's not an official quilt yet, but this quilt top that I just recently finished, it is you know what, it's turned out pretty well. I didn't know what I was going to do with it, and let me explain why. This was originally a Stitch It kit, which is available through Cotton Cuts. They basically have different little kits that you can buy with different number of pieces. You can buy, I think it's small, medium, and large. I can't remember the exact names, but basically you can buy a small, medium, and I think large kits, and inside those kits are pre-cut fabrics that you can then put together in any which way you want. It's basically a choose your own adventure kind of box, and it's a lot of fun trying to figure out what to do with it. There's a lot that can be done with it, and sometimes it can feel quite overwhelming. So the backstory is Katie, the Greenland quilter, actually sent me a Stitch It kit, and she knew that I loved Tula Pink. So I dove in and really had a lot of fun working with these pre-cut pieces to create blocks. And that was really what I was just going off of. I was just going to create blocks, and a lot of times I was actually doing it on live stream with my featherweight. So if you want to check those out, I'm going to put a link to those videos down in the description of this video, and you can check me out putting together some blocks using my featherweight. So like I said, the Greenland quilter Katie sent me the box, and I went to town creating all kinds of blocks. I mostly made a lot of them kind of improv. I just kind of looked at the pieces that were available in the box. There are triangles, there are rectangles, there are some squares. You can make all sorts of half square triangles, diamonds, you name it. You can kind of figure out how to make it just on the fly. But I did actually use some of the Cotton Cuts Block of the Month cards. These are from 2023. And so I used some of them for inspiration and being able to kind of get a better idea, because I felt like I was going to repeat myself if I kept going the way I was going with improv. And so I used some of those to help give me inspiration for different blocks I could add. Those Stitch It kits are just so much fun because you can be as creative as you want to with it. So I started going at it, making these half square triangles and playing around with it. And I do have a block. I don't know. I feel like if I were to go back and do it again, I might change out this block because I feel like it pulls a lot of attention to it because it doesn't have a lot of other colors. It's just two fabrics. And to me, it feels almost a little empty, and like my eye wants to go straight for that one block. But that's also why I kind of put it in the center. I almost wanted a focal point that you could radiate out from. So all in all, I think it works, but maybe next time I would do that one a little bit differently. So as I was going along, I realized that I actually made two different sizes of blocks. I have my kind of smaller blocks, and then I have my larger blocks. And I didn't know exactly how I wanted to fit them into one quilt, but I knew that I probably had some fabric in my stash that I could work into the quilt and help kind of frame everything out. And sure enough, in my stash, I had just the perfect fabric. So I had assembled all my blocks, but then how do I put them together into a quilt that makes sense, that works, that makes me happy? And so I started going to work on what can I do. I actually there are two strips of the purple fabric that were already cut. They were actually leftover pieces from the Carnival quilt. I used some of this purple fabric to add my own borders onto that quilt. And so I grabbed the two sashing pieces that were left over from the borders and figured this would be a great starting point where I could start fitting the blocks around those two columns. And sure enough, it started to work out nicely, except for the fact that I had two different sized blocks. How was I going to make that work? And which way was it going to work out? I actually started off by putting all of my larger blocks all up and down in a row, and then put the smaller blocks on either side, three of them on either side, and that it didn't quite work. It was too heavy in the center, and there wasn't enough resting space for your eyes. So I started to think about how could I frame out these smaller squares, and so I did the math, and I started to figure out how much space I needed to fill in, and unfortunately I got the measurements wrong. I put it together, did the math, But I forgot seam allowances. How could I forget seam allowances? I don't know. But I did. I forgot seam allowances, and so I ended up cutting all my fabric to the original size that I thought I needed, only to find out that I had messed it up and needed to go back and recut them all to the correct size. But even with that, I did figure out how to frame them out, and I like this kind of small block, large block, small block, large block, you know, repeating it but inverse on the middle row. I think it looks pretty cool, and it gives some space for the eye to move around, rest, and it just feels comfortable to me. So once I had that all sewn together, I felt like I needed a border, because otherwise any other border that I was going to put on it was going to eat into my larger blocks. And so I wanted a place to kind of give that space and that breathing room. So thankfully I had just enough of this purple fabric to make a very thin border. It is very thin, but it works well and gives that breathing room before you get to the changing fabric of the next border. Finally, I had leftover fabric from Carnival. These were actually going to be the original borders for Carnival, and I saved the fabric since I wasn't going to use it on that quilt. I knew there was going to be a quilt that I could use them on, and sure enough, here we are. It shows up in just the perfect time, and I love that it kind of plays off the blue and turquoise that are already in the quilt. A lot of these colors kind of play off of each other. The only new addition would be the purple, but yet it still fits into the color scheme. It fits well and complements everything else, especially these pinks and purples. I feel like it complements everything in it. It's all Tula fabric, so it should hopefully all work together. But I really like how it turned out, and I love that it's a smaller size than what I would normally make. Obviously, I am not going to be using this quilt when it is finished, but it is a perfect baby or even, you know, lap quilt, child quilt. I think this was going to become a very nice quilt once it gets all quilted up. And I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but it was a fun exercise in seeing how to use the Stitch It kit and play around with it and just kind of get creative. Now, I'll be honest, this is not the most perfect quilt I've ever made. There are a lot of mistakes in it. There is definitely some wobbliness in it. I don't think the borders went on perfectly straight. I think there's a little bit of give in those. And you might also notice, you probably can't see from that far away, but looking up close, this block right here, there is a very thin border around it. That's because when I was working on this specific block, I noticed that the edges were not matching up very well. And so I trimmed them, not realizing that I was going to be trimming into that seam allowance, and ended up making about a 12-inch block instead of a 12.5-inch block. That was very frustrating when I found that out, because I needed just a hair more of fabric to make it work. And I originally thought about framing it out in the purple. I think I would have had enough to frame that out in the purple, but then it would have looked weird because there would have been 3 sizes of block. We would have had the small, we would have had this one, and then one of this one, by the way, and then we would have had the large, which that just, I knew your eye was going to get drawn to that. I didn't want that to happen. But when you're far back, you can't see the border. It doesn't distract you, I should say. You see it, but it doesn't distract you because it uses all the same colors and fabrics that all the other blocks are made out of, so it doesn't send up those like, hey, look at me, look at me. So I definitely think I could have done a better job with this block and maybe a couple other ones, but I still think the quilting will help kind of even it out and kind of distract and hide some of those mistakes. Overall, I'm pretty happy with it, and just honestly very proud of being able to create something on the fly, just randomly, no instructions, just having fun. So if you get one of those Stitch It kits and you just don't know what to do with it, I hope this gives you a little inspiration on being able to have fun with block play and being able to go free and have some fun experimenting and playing around with different block styles. There are loads of blocks available on the internet for free. All you have to do is Google and the plethora of all the different blocks out there. will show up for you, and there are plenty of sizes as well. You can play around with size and a lot of different factors to make your quilt or your quilt blocks, whichever way you want to go with them, whatever you would like. You can do so many different things with them. Table runners, pillows, a lot of different things. I've even seen somebody use a Stitch It kit, probably the large, to make an entire quilt. And yeah, I was very impressed with their imagination and being able to play around with making a quilt top using it. But yeah, I think it turned out okay, and playing around with that Stitch It kit was a lot of fun, like I said. So I hope this gives you a little bit of inspiration, and if you are interested in a Stitch It kit, make sure to go over to the Cotton Cuts website and check it out. They come out usually on the 15th of every month, and the fabric selection changes every month as well. So you can definitely check it out each month and see if there's a colorway, or Stitch It box colorway that is, that you are interested in and can check out. I know that this was a little bit of a different video here on my channel, but I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Let YouTube know that you like this video, and also me as well. Maybe I'll do more videos like this in the future. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day, and remember guys, normal is just a setting on the dryer. Bye.